The crystal chandelier above the mahogany dining table vibrated with a low electric hum that seemed to echo inside my skull. It was Christmas, the day of perfect family gatherings. But the air in my father's dining room felt like a pressurized chamber. The aroma of rosemary roasted chicken and the expensive pine tree I had secretly ordered and paid for filled the room. I sat there, fingers tracing the rim of my wine glass. I looked at my father, Don Javier Castillo. He looked every inch the patriarch in his velvet jacket, with perfectly silver hair, reclining with a confidence he had never earned. Then the hammer fell. "Elena," my father said, his voice dropping to a practiced tone of weary disappointment. He didn't look at me. He looked at his wine glass. "You have to stop this. You have to stop begging for money. It's Christmas, and frankly, we're all exhausted by your constant requests." The silence that followed was deafening. My fork clattered against the fine porcelain. I looked around the table. My mother couldn't hold my gaze. My brother Alejandro looked away, hiding a smile behind his napkin. But it was my sister Valeria who drove the knife deeper. She leaned forward, her diamond earrings, the ones I had given her for her birthday, catching the light. "It's so pathetic," she whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "We've all worked so hard for what we have. Seeing you constantly chasing after Dad is embarrassing for the family name." "We all agree," my father added, his voice calm, level, and utterly cold in its falseness. "We've decided, not another cent. You need to learn the value of money, even if it means hardship." I didn't shout, I didn't cry, I didn't even defend myself. I only felt a strange, cold clarity wash over me like a breaking fever. For 5 years I had played the role of the struggling artist while secretly building a venture capital empire behind a corporate veil they could never penetrate. For 5 years I had quietly channeled 6-figure sums every month into the family trust they all lived from, letting them believe it was the remnants of grandfather's investments. I stood up slowly. I didn't look at the food. I didn't look at the gifts under the tree, all bought with my black card. "I understand," I said. My voice was a whisper, stripped of emotion. "You're right. It's time to stop." I walked out of the room. Behind me, I heard Valeria's laugh. Finally, she gets the hint. I stepped into the sharp December cold, got into my modest sedan that I kept specifically for family visits, and pulled out my phone. I dialed a number that belonged to neither friend nor lover. It went to a private line in Zurich. "Speak, Elena, proceed," I said, my breath fogging the windshield. "Identity verification. Echo 7 name. I need a total liquidity freeze on final distribution account 21. Effective immediately. No grace period." The bank manager on the other end didn't hesitate. "Understood, Miss Vargas. Account 21 funds the dividends for the main residence of the Castillo estate." "Correct. This will cut all credit lines and recurring payments." "Do it," I said, "and transfer ownership of the Greenwich estate from the holding company to my personal portfolio. It's time for the tenants to vacate." To understand why I did it, you must understand the lie we had been living. My father, Don Javier Castillo, was a man of prestige but no substance. He had lost the last of the real family fortune when I was 18 in a series of disastrous property bets. Too proud to admit failure, he spent the next decade pretending. I was the one who saw the bank notices. I was the one who spent nights in the university dorm learning to invest, to build, to scale. By 24 I had made my first million. By 27 I was worth more than my father had ever dreamed. But I knew my family. I knew that if they found out I had money, they wouldn't just ask, they would demand, claiming it as family property. So I created Account 21. I told my father I had discovered a forgotten trust in grandfather's name. I let him believe he managed it, though he had no access to the capital. I gave them a life of luxury. I paid for Valeria's 3 weddings and 2 divorces. I funded Alejandro's so-called startups that were really just excuses to party in Ibiza. I paid for the roof over their heads, and my reward was to be the family's scapegoat. They needed someone to look down on to feel better about their unearned status. I was the beggar because I wore generic designer clothes and didn't show off. I let them believe I was the taker so they never realized I was the giver. Until that night, the lie my father told at dinner wasn't just a lie. It was a power play to humiliate me in front of Valeria's new wealthy fiancé. He wanted to look like the benevolent, suffering father. Fine, let him be the father. Let's see how he does without the benefactor. The effect didn't take weeks. It took hours. The next morning, Boxing Day, the final 21 freeze hit like a silent earthquake. I spent the morning in my city penthouse, the one they didn't know existed, sipping coffee and watching notifications on my tablet. First, the household secondary cards were declined, the ones Valeria used for her shopping sprees. By 11 a.m., my phone began to vibrate. It was Valeria. I let it go to voicemail. Elena, are you doing something with the accounts? My card was declined at the mall. Probably just a glitch, but if you're playing games because of last night, stop. It's embarrassing. An hour later, Alejandro called, then my mother, finally, the lion himself. I answered on the 10th ring. Elena, my father roared. He sounded desperate. The calm from dinner was completely shattered. There's been a mistake at the bank. The trust account is frozen. Everything. The estate mortgage payment bounced this morning and the staff payroll is blocked. I need you to call your contacts at the bank and fix this. Why would I do that? Dad, I asked, leaning back in my leather chair. You told me to stop begging for money. You told me I needed to learn the value of money. I took your advice seriously. I'm no longer involved in your finances. Don't be childish, he shouted. This is family money. This is our legacy. No, Dad, I said, lowering my voice an octave. It was my money. There was no grandfather's trust. I built that account. I financed every vacation, every bottle of wine, and every lie you told yourself. And since I'm so pathetic, I decided to stop being your personal ATM. There was a long, harsh silence on the other end. I could hear his heavy, ragged breathing. You're lying, he whispered. You're a failure. You've always been a failure. Check the property deed, Dad. Check the estate title. It's under EV Ventures. Want to guess what EV stands for? I hung up. The following days were a symphony of chaos. The final 21 freeze triggered a domino effect. The private debts my father had hidden even from my mother surfaced screaming. Creditors who had been kept at bay by the steady interest payments from my account suddenly found the well dry. I watched through the security cameras I had installed at the estate under the pretext of protection. I saw the repossessors come for the cars. I saw Valeria screaming at a man in a suit as he towed her convertible. I saw my father on the porch, looking old and fragile, realizing the hardship he had threatened me with had now reached him. 2 weeks later I returned to the estate, not as a guest, but as the owner. The house was cold. They couldn't pay for heating. The grand Christmas tree had turned brown, shedding needles across the floor. My family was huddled in the living room around a single space heater. They looked different. The arrogance was gone, replaced by raw, desperate fear. Valeria stood up when I entered, her face streaked with tears. Elena, please, we didn't know, she said. Dad told us it was his. We're sorry. Just reactivate the accounts. We can't live like this. You were so quick to call me pathetic, I said, looking at her. You enjoyed it. You needed me beneath you to feel superior. How does the floor feel, Valeria? She flinched and looked away. My father remained in his chair, his stained velvet jacket hanging loosely. He didn't look up. You humiliated me, he croaked. Your own father. You humiliated yourself the moment you lied to your family to feed your own ego. I replied. I didn't destroy this family, Javier. I simply stopped pretending to be the glue holding together your delusions. I placed a large manila envelope on the coffee table. The house is sold, I said. I already accepted an offer from a developer. You have 72 hours to pack your personal belongings. There's a small 2-bedroom apartment in the city. It's paid for 1 year. After that, Alejandro, you'll need to get a job. Valeria, you might want to sell those diamonds I bought you. Dad, you can live on Social Security. I hear that's what people who understand the value of money do. You can't do this, Alejandro shouted, though his voice lacked conviction. I already did, I said. Final 21 was the limit. I gave you 21 chances to treat me like a human being. Not a resource. Last night was the 21st. I turned to leave. At the door I paused. Oh, and Dad, Merry Christmas. I hope you enjoyed the dinner. It was the most expensive meal you'll ever have. I walked out of the house without looking back. The air was still cold, but for the first time in my life I didn't feel the chill. I felt the warmth of a fire I had finally stepped away from, a fire fueled by my own spirit for far too long. I drove back to the city, to my life, to the world I had built with my own hands. The silence in the car wasn't loneliness. It was peace. The revenge wasn't in the hardship I left them in. It was in the freedom I finally gave myself. They had always called me the beggar, but as the estate disappeared in my rearview mirror, I knew the truth. I was the only one who had ever truly been rich. Thank you for listening to today's story. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. See you in the next story.